So there's this really strange misconception around human life of unworthiness. We have this structural belief in our society, in this civilization, at least in the Western world, that's built around unworthiness. I guess things couldn't be sold to us, and um, I guess the money wouldn't rule the world if we believed otherwise. But I feel there's this deep, deep, deep structural sense of unworthiness and shame and smallness that affects all of us. And we kind of ingest that in mother's milk. Even if we're loved even if we were loved as children, and if we've received a lot of support and nurturing and all that, we still ingest that sense of shame and unworthiness in the culture that's so inherent in the culture. And what I mean by that is that we have these subconscious, like layers and layers and layers of these subconscious beliefs that there's something wrong within us, we're somehow broken, things need to be fixed. And of course, we're especially prone to this if we've been traumatized or if we've experienced, say, adverse childhood conditions. And I mean, show me someone who hasn't been wounded by life. We all get wounds. We have different backgrounds, different life stories. Some of them are very, very harsh. All of us get wounded or traumatized in one way or another. But the maybe pitiful, if I would use that word, part of that is that we somehow become to think that it's our own fault and it's because we've done something wrong and we're these lowly human beings and that we don't deserve self-love, but we should get love from other people and we should get validation and acceptance and safety. But sometimes we don't even believe in that. And we believe that we should be we deserve to be treated badly and unkind, and we deserve to be poor and sick and whatever. Often this is very subconscious, of course, but I think, frankly, this is a form of sort of insanity. And by saying it's a form of insanity, to me, doesn't mean, I don't mean that in a condescending way, or I don't mean that in an insulting way. I just mean that in a way that how come we've come so far off from the centers of our true beings, um, of love and of, because our souls are in this constant state of acceptance and love. And there is this paradoxical nature about it because it doesn't mean human life somehow gets better like that, or somehow perfect or not flawed, or necessarily even that wars vanish or anything like that. But when we learn more self acceptance, we actually become more in sync with our souls, with our true beings. And we come back to our natural state. And the grip of that unworthiness, those layers of unworthiness, and those beliefs in our own smallness start letting go. And even if this sounds very like broad or fluffy or idealistic, this is all very practical things. We learn to relate to ourselves, mm, from the perspective of kindness and understanding and non-demand and non-judgment, and which means like we're not approaching ourselves or life or other people necessarily so much anymore from these dualistic terms or good and bad or right or wrong, but with more acceptance and understanding. And that also means our difficult feelings. When it's difficult to accept something, or we're having a hard time with something, we don't necessarily strive for fixing it or getting it right or changing it or changing other people or changing ourselves. But we sort of accept and relax into this very contradictory nature of ourselves and life in general. And that's actually when those deeply held beliefs of unworthiness start to be released from our being. We don't necessarily think of things in those black and white terms anymore. Acceptance and worthiness can mean that we accept that, well, some parts of our lives are we're not very happy, or we got wounded, or um, we couldn't quite figure something out, or we couldn't necessarily quite get over something that happened to us. And we can be kind and caring and compassionate around that. And when we actually do, the resistance around those experiences sort of dismantles. And we can be okay with life as it is without judging ourselves so deep anymore, without thinking that there's something wrong with me because I experienced that, and I need to somehow get over that to prove my worth, and that I should somehow be different to be able to experience my worth. The truth of the matter, at least to me, is that we're always worthy. Our worth is unchangeable and it's unquestionable as beings and as human beings. And self love to me is when we actually start experiencing this, when the deep hold of unworthiness just starts loosening its grip around our hearts and our psyches and our bodies and our beings. And this doesn't mean that we need to somehow improve ourselves or get rid of all that unworthiness. It's just when we start seeing sort of through that and through those beliefs and through those modes of operations that were stemming from feeling less than, or feeling guilt, or feeling shame, or feeling like we were not good enough. And when we learn to support ourselves around and through those feelings, they sort of start losing their potency, let's say. So that's something that I wanted to share about my feelings around what this collective unworthiness is about, and how we can actually find our way through um, towards our inner being. But when I say towards our inner being, it doesn't mean like there's this necessarily like this big journey from A to B. It's rather when I learn to relax into what is and not judge myself so much anymore, is when that those beliefs of unworthiness start dissolving, dismantling. And that's when I start realizing my true beingness, who I really, really am deep down.